my right to life by recklessly driving like that. So can the federal government decide what is right for something that we do in our own local area? Now, the framers of the Constitution had an idea of what powers belonged on the local government, in the federal government, but they didn't specifically list these. So when it comes to the freedom food chain, who decides? Now, in the book I give an analogy about, suppose you have a precious diamond ring and you're going on vacation. Would you give that diamond ring to someone that you've never met before and you're hoping that you get to write to them once in a while? Maybe if you call a scheduler months in advance, you can get a 5-minute meeting with him? No, because if he doesn't give it back, how are you going to hold him accountable? You would probably give it to a neighbor or a friend who, if he doesn't give it back, you will see him mowing his lawn. You'll bump into him in a carpool lane and you'll be able to say, "Hey buddy, you did me a favor, I'm grateful, but it's time to give it back. What happened to it?" Now, our freedoms are much more precious than a diamond ring. Much more precious than any earthly possession that we could have. Why would we entrust them to someone that is not accountable to us? So the bigger the freedom and the more it's infringed, the more it's local. Where we can have accountability, where those leaders who infringe on our freedoms, who determine which freedoms are greater and which are lesser, can be accountable to those whose freedoms are being infringed upon. So going into 2012 and beyond, we need to remember why we say we want limited and local government. And then making the argument for free enterprise and low taxes. You know, some people could say, well, you're just a capitalist, you're just greedy, and we've heard that, especially in this economic crisis. Well, if you believe in limited taxes, if you believe in these principles, you must be selfish and not care for the little guy. So in the chapter that I call The Power of the Soundbite, I lay out the principles as to why socialism is wrong, why communism is wrong, why if you care about the little guy, then we need an economic system that empowers the human person, that honors the individual, that respects their unrepeatable, precious dignity. Now, the economic system of a benevolent society should honor the person and should respect the person. And that's why here in America, we don't have the slave trade anymore. That's why we are trying very hard to stop the sex trafficking that we had. A pure capitalist might be able to make an argument for that because there unfortunately is a market. But we, as freedom lovers, would say, no, that's not true capitalism. And then we have to articulate what we mean if we can't articulate the argument for why we don't allow those certain things. A free market economy that empowers the individual allows them to enjoy the rewards of their own hard work. Freedom is inscribed on everybody's heart. It's the way God created us. In our longing to be loved, in our desire to be appreciated, the way that we want to be valued, the way we want our work to be rewarded. Think of it in your own marriages. You want your husband or your wife to appreciate who you are. Think about in your workplace. You want your boss to honor your work. In my book, I talk about my grandfather, who shares with us a story about how he was a beer taster in Philadelphia. And his job was to taste the beer and to try to tell if it was about to turn. And one of the greatest things that one of the stories he would share with us was about how he had told his boss, this batch of beer is about to turn. So they did all kinds of tests, everything came up that it was okay. But he said, look, you send this into market in 2 weeks, you're going to have sour beer, and then you're going to have a PR nightmare on your hand. Well, his boss said, you know what? All the tests are saying that's wrong, but I've learned to trust your word. I've learned to value that you know how to do your job, and we're going to listen to you. And they pulled that batch, and in about 10 days it turned sour. And my grandfather shared that story with us because of the work ethic that he had and what it meant that his boss trusted his word. Now, in a free market economy where you allow someone to be proud and appreciated because of their unique gifts that they can bring, that's what America is about. And that's how freedom is inscribed in our hearts. So we as a movement, if our message isn't resonating with someone, you don't abandon the message, as Karl Rove and others would suggest that we do. We reframe it so that it resonates with that longing in their heart. The truth is inscribed on their heart. It will resonate if we reframe it. So going in, but not abandon it. Now going into 2012, that is our biggest challenge. And I think down here in Southern Florida, you guys are on it. Marcus was telling me about the wonderful work you're doing with the Hispanic community and the Hispanic media, and that's exactly what more people need to be doing. Going into those areas and showing why we believe what we do. Why what we believe is right for them and right for this country. So then I close the book with some practical implications about how, you know, we are not going to win our first time out, no matter what it is. No major advancement in our country was because one person won their battle. George Washington didn't suddenly say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling kind of oppressed by King George. Anyone else? Yeah, let's have independence. And then they all had independence, went on speaking tours and book tours. It wasn't like that, if you know your history. Most of them ended up having bounties on their head. And many of our founding fathers died in poverty because they gave up everything. The slave trade didn't end because one person said, you know what? I think what we're doing is kind of evil. And they all went, oh, that's right, okay. Let's change our whole economic system that's dependent on the slave trade because this is wrong, and you said it was wrong. No, there was major pushback. Major pushback. So what we are fighting is no less. It's going to require no less than what was required of those before us if we're going to win this second American Revolution. So I close the book with what I hope will be an inspiration for other people to get involved. Regardless of whether or not you win, if you put your name on the line and you run, you are holding the establishment accountable just by running. Now I'm going to close with two more things before we go to questions, just with an example of how you'll hold the establishment accountable. In my own race, it was November of 2009 when I had just decided, okay, I'm going to run. But I hadn't yet officially announced, and I was just organizing our volunteers. And it was the day of the Obamacare vote. The Delaware Tea Party had a rally. Now, 3 days before that vote, our current congressman in Delaware, we only have one congressman. And he was the establishment's, as you guys probably know, I know a lot of you supported my race, he was the establishment's chosen. He voted with the Democrats more than the Republicans on major initiatives. And according to the transcripts of a constituent call, he was going to be voting with the Democrats again on Obamacare. But then the rumors started going that people were encouraging me to run and to primary him because they had grown frustrated with how far of a departure he has taken from the principles that not just made our party great, but made our country great. The principles on which our country was founded. So on the day of the vote, there was a rally, and I was giving a speech about how horrible Obamacare was. And everybody held up their cell phones and called his office right then and there, and ultimately he voted the right way. But if he didn't think that there was a primary, most likely he would have voted the way that he said he was going to originally. So just by stepping up, you are holding the establishment accountable. Even if they're faking it, at least let them act the right way. And then I want to close you, if I can borrow this book that's on display. It's interesting to get the feedback, and if you read the book, if you could, go to the website and email me, let me know your comments, because that's what keeps us motivated. As we're on the book tour, it's, you know, almost just like the campaign all over again. People are pushing back, but the feedback we're getting from the people who've read the book have made it all worth it. So if you read it, you know, please let me know what you think. But I love that, you know, people comment on anything from the freedom food chain concept. Oh, thank you. Remind me again. And that's going, don't forget, tell people to sign up. We have Christine Pack, I'll get to that in a minute. Wave your hand again if I forget. But anything from the freedom food chain to a fun little story I tell in here about how on the day of the primary, I wore this red blazer, and because we won, and you know, overnight it went from a grassroots campaign with a handful of volunteers to what some in the media were calling a mini presidential campaign, and Jenny can attest. We suddenly had, you know, the Japanese media from Thailand, I mean, surrounding our office. So the blazer that I was wearing on the day of the primary ended up on the cover of New York Times, above the fold front page, broadcast on TV all over literally the world. So when Time Magazine was doing the cover story that I took the title Troublemaker from, they called me, they did a cover story on the 2010 elections, and they called me the troublemaker because of the way that I busted up the backroom deals, and the establishment on both sides of the aisle were coming after me. So they might have meant it as an insult, but I took it as a compliment. But they specifically